Jeez, that light is bright.
Now, if you guys remember my Halloween Ends mask unboxing video, I said that I was going to rehaul this boy, and I finally rehauled it a while back, but I never fully showed you guys it. I've decided you guys have waited far too long enough for it, so let's get to the video. Now, Trick or Treat Studios, the company who made this mask, they're always 50-50 when it comes to the Michael Myers mask that they make. However, this one, they knocked it out of the park, in my personal opinion. First off, the sculpt is amazing, actually screen use sculpt by Christopher Nelson, as well as the hair, and not to mention the mold that they added, not to mention they did a pretty good job with the paint job as well. While it is a beauty to look at, I was obviously going to be making some big changes for it, so now's a time to say goodbye to the stock version of the mask. An important thing to keep in mind is propping the mask. You can do this with a paper towel rack or a grocery bag stuffed together. I personally use a styrofoam head while placing 2 bags over it to not let the latex be exposed to the foam. You want to make sure your mask is propped up pretty well so that it doesn't warp or that it doesn't deteriorate over time. Once we had our mask propped up correctly, it was time to cut off this little tag thing. Make sure not to throw these away because these things are pretty cool. Teaches you how to take care of the mask and has a cool little title card on the front. Now, out of the thousands of amazing Michael Myers mask rehauling videos out there, it all begins with a rehairing. A common way to rehair a Michael Myers mask is to remove the entire stock hair and replace it with completely new hair. Majority of people tend to throw the stock hair in the trash, but I wanted to keep the hair while adding minor changes. First off, the hair is really matted together, almost cemented together, so there was a lot of separation that had to be done with the hairs. I would go all over the noggin and scruff up the hair, making it all wild. Basically did this all over the mask while removing some of the hairs altogether, of which I made sure to keep for later. Where the hair was heavily glued was the neck, where I had to use sandpaper to pull the hair up. Once we tidied up the hair, it was time to re-glue the hair pieces. Now, Michael is a 60-year-old man at this point, which makes sense for him to have at least some balding spots in his hair. Yet that was the opposite of what I wanted for my mask. So with the leftover hair pieces I pulled off, that wasn't a problem. When gluing a Myers mask, there's a variety of different glue you can use. Obviously do your research since latex is a delicate material to work with. I personally use Tacky Glue Clear since it's easy to work with. While I prefer hot glue for most of my projects, I heavily suggest not using hot glue with latex since I don't think it would be the best combination. I checked the areas I was going to glue and I started gluing. Majority of the hair strands I pulled were very small, but when they were glued together, they covered up the hairlines pretty well. Even though the hair looked pretty good, with my impulsiveness, I decided last minute to rip the front part off and simply glue it right back on, which wasn't a huge deal. Just took lots of time and lots of patience. Once I had re-glued all the hair pieces, this is what it looked like. It already is a major improvement since his hairline, when it first came in, almost had a sort of bowl cut, and the transition between the glue lines feel as natural as I wanted it. Once we have finished fixing Michael's very interesting hairstyle, the next step was the painting! But just before we started painting our masterpiece, we first needed to remove the various mold as mentioned earlier. At first I tried various different ways to get the mold off, but I found the best way of doing it was to wipe it off with isopropyl alcohol, which many other mask makers have done before. Then I took an old piece of fabric and dosed it with the alcohol. Made sure to use 50% isopropyl alcohol. However, be careful with this stuff because I underestimated how runny it is, which graduated into a big spill. Yikes. But I continued on, starting to gently wipe the rag all over the mask. Had to wipe it multiple times and dose it even more times to get as much mold off as I possibly could. Had to do a lot more wiping on the burnt side because that had a lot more mold than the other side. Although I couldn't get 100% of the mold off, I was pretty happy with how it came out. I also was a bit patient since I wanted to get onto the painting. So with all the mold off, we had a clear canvas for us to paint on, and that meant it was time to paint. Painting on any Myers mask is a very interesting process, but painting this one was going to be even weirder. We need some liquid latex, courtesy of the one and only Spirit Halloween, and some basic acrylic paint. Paint I used for this particular color was Natural Buff, mixed with a darkish reddish brown color. The first layer of paint was going to be a flesh tone. For those of you who don't know, the original 1978 Michael mask used in the movie was a Captain Kirk mask, spray painted white by Tommy Lee Wallace. Since this is meant to be the same mask chronologically, but very old, I wanted to get that Kirk flesh tone I was looking for. And at this point it just really showed the wrinkles that he had. And then I let it dry. While the flesh tone was pretty, I needed to whiten him up a little bit. I used some matte white and off-white mixed with hippo gray, gave this good grayish white color that I was looking for. Unlike the flesh tone, I went with a different style of painting. I went to the dry brushing route. I would take the paint, dab some of the paint off, and lightly paint the white highlights on. Because I still wanted the Kirk flesh tone to be seen, which is why I didn't apply too much white. Made sure to go very carefully and very slowly with how much white I wanted on the mask. An optional step to do is to add a mustardy yellow, since the majority of the mask is burned. This will be the very bottom color of the burns, since it'll be almost melted latex so you can see it through the burns, the little hints of yellow. Obviously I was going to cover it up because I didn't want a Michael Myers mask covered in mustard. Once I got the basic colors, it was on to the weathering. A very common technique to aid the mask is to take some acrylic paint and heavily water it down. Then paint it all over the mask. With the acrylic paint watered down, it'll seep into the many cracks and crevices, of which this mask has many. Make sure to paint all over the mask and let it dry for a couple seconds. Make sure not to let it dry for too long, like I did. Then take a paper towel and wipe off the excess paint. If the paint dried too much, like mine did, you can dab the paper towel into some water, which wiped away the paint much better. The first coat itself did do a pretty good job of weathering, but I wanted a second coat, which I thought brought it to the point where I was really satisfied with it. It looked extremely good, especially under certain areas of lighting.
While it looked amazing, I wasn't done just yet. I made sure to add some black paint to the burns to add some variety, since I felt like it was just mainly one color for the majority, so I wanted to add a little bit of texture. I mainly put the black paint in the dark crevices and holes, which made them really stand out. Another thing I wanted to change was the transition from one side to the other. At first it kind of gave the appearance of Two-Face from Batman, since it went from light to dark almost immediately, so I wanted to give more a transition between. So I dry brushed some white paint, creating more fade from the white to the burns. Another key mark on the mask was the bullet wound from the one and only Miss Judy Greer in 2018. In Halloween Kills, it was a reddish, fresh blood color, but 4 years have passed since then, so I wanted to give the appearance of dried, almost rusty looking blood, which made it look very aged, and I liked the way it looked. However, when I was done with that, I realized what time it was. In my opinion, the best time to work on cosplay is late, especially on a school night. The fact that it was late and that my working area was a huge mess, I think it was time to take a break. After my long break, there was still some painting to be done. I took some green acrylic paint, mixed it with liquid latex, and painted away. While the majority of the mask had more of a warmish color with its reds and browns, I wanted to incorporate some earthy greens into it since Michael has been living in a sewer, much similar to Pennywise. I mainly painted it on the burned side, as well as adding to the rest of the mask. At the end, the green gave it more of a zombified look, not to be mixed with the Rob Zombie movies. To fix that, I used the same technique of taking some black acrylic paint and heavily watering it down while adding some liquid latex to darken the details and the cracks, which definitely graded out and lessened the green tones that I was going for. At this point, I was really happy with how it looked, especially for my first time painting a Myers mask. But there was one detail missing: the iconic, yet disgusting, mold. The stock mask itself came with mold in the beginning, however, I wanted to create it my own way. I took some tacky glue clear and very gently poured some glue on the burns. Not too much glue, since I didn't want a giant gob staying on there. I added glue to that side since that seems to be where the majority of the mold is in the movie. I'm not sure what material the stock mold was, but I decided to use tiny pieces of polyfill to create it. I dabbed on the pieces, had to dab multiple times since it took a while for the polyfill to stick. After multiple dabs, the mold gave the appearance of cobwebs or dust, which I was going for. The final touch was to add a little bit of color, mainly for the dried blood sections in the gunshot wound and around the hairline. Finally, after rehairing, after painting, and after molding, I considered the mask done.
At last, we have come to the end of our Michael Myers mask rehauling journey. Overall, I am extremely happy with how it turned out. Even before starting cosplay as a whole, I had always wanted to rehaul a Michael Myers mask, since I found the mask making process of it to be very interesting. I would watch hundreds and hundreds of rehaul videos, which made me want to rehaul my own mask even more. I'll link some of my favorite artists' rehaul videos here. And now I finally got to do it. And I'll just say it was a really fun process. It was scary and complicated at first, but I got through it. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the process, I'll be happy to answer any of them below.
Also, you can see that I made the knife as well as the coveralls, and if you guys want a future video of me explaining how I did both of those, let me know down in the comments below.
Hope this video inspires you guys, and remember that my process / mask may be different from yours, and that's okay. My mask isn't 100% accurate to the movie since I wanted to give my own personal flair or touch to it, of which I was really happy with. Not to mention I took it with me to a convention, which was really fun. Thanks everybody for watching. If you like this video, you can check out my other cosplay videos and subscribe if you want to see future uploads. Thanks everybody for watching, and always remember to create, whether that be art, cosplay, music, whatever. Anyways, bye.